Is on. Okay. Hi, everyone. I will be introducing myself more officially later on in the slides, but I'm taking over the introduction slides here, I guess. But welcome. This is Wild Ones, Big River, Big Woods. I got to get that name right. So welcome our February meeting. Just a couple pieces of information here. Attendance to these meetings are always free, open to the public. Our website right there. If you wanted to join the Wild Ones organization, you can do so at wildones.org. $40 annual membership fee. A bunch of other information on that website as well. And board meetings are held monthly by Zoom. And then we, of course, meet here monthly as well. Couple additional resources. Again, our website, the national one, Facebook, and then Instagram pages that you can all follow us. Here is the list of new board members, me as the president, and then everyone else. Do we want to raise hands? Board members? Board members, wave. Thank you. Did you have a question?
I just wonder how many of these folks are.
Oh, well, there you go. We did it. Okay, so I did want to officially introduce myself. I was here last meeting, and I think I was officially the president at that time, but I didn't really get to introduce or come up here and speak. But my name is Kendra Sommerfeld. I have a pretty extensive background in everything from watershed management to native plants, rain gardens, prescribed fires. I've kind of done it all a little bit. And now, weirdly, I work in outreach and communications at Rice Creek Watershed Management, oh my gosh, I almost just said her name wrong. Rice Creek Watershed Districts. So I am their outreach and communications manager, and we are actually in Rice Creek Watershed District right now. So that's kind of how I got involved with this organization as well. But I've worked in nonprofits, Great River Greening, the Nature Conservancy, if anyone knows them, private contracting, where I've actually built rain gardens and planted tons of plants. I can't even count the number of plants I've planted and the weeds that I have sprayed and pulled and cut down. But now I have a much better office job. I like being inside. So yes. And then other things that I do, president now of this chapter. And I do live in South St. Paul, but I think I'm going to be actually moving to Roseville here shortly. But I'm on South St. Paul's Park Board, and I'm also on the Lower Mississippi River Watershed Management Organization. So that's where all the names come from. But yeah, I'll give myself a little shout out. I did win the Watershed District Employee of the Year from the Board of Minnesota Board of Soil and Water Resources. Thank you. So that was pretty cool. Yes, yeah, yes. Thank you. Yeah, so I do have to say I haven't been in water resources very long, so people were a little impressed by that, because usually it's a pretty senior person that gets it. So I just gotta give myself a little shout out for that. But yeah, and I brought a little light to the outreach and communications area. Usually it's a project manager that gets these awards because they're doing multi-million-dollar projects. My projects aren't necessarily that big, but I do get to talk about the multi-million-dollar projects. So it's a good time. And then I get to do really fun things. Another picture there, Fridley, it's Fridley and Rice Creek Watershed District's first public art piece. So I brought that to the district, which I'm very proud of, and we have more to come. So art is important to me and something I'm very interested in, and kind of hope I can bring some art aspects to this chapter as well. I have a couple ideas, but we'll talk about that in the future. But yeah, so thanks for having me, and thanks for voting me as president. I'm happy to be here. Some upcoming events. I added the Silverwood Park one. I think that's in a couple days, isn't it? But yeah, the Wild Ones Walk.
It's
So.
gonna be non-icy, I think.
There you go.
Good chance.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the snow kind of ruined the outdoors for me at this moment, but
Well, they have a really nice cafe, so if you wanna hang out, I'm gonna stop and get tea or something at the cafe.
nice.
So it's
Awesome.
not just walk, it's lots.
There you go. So yeah, that in a couple of days. Upcoming chapter meetings, March, April, May. I'm going to be speaking at the May one, but a couple other great speakers before that. Feel free to come to those too. And then plant of the month.
Done, and we just started this section. Who suggested this?
We've done it a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Okay, we thought it was a good way to maybe learn a little bit more about a specific plant, especially if you haven't planted it. I planted it for maybe 3 years. Partridge pea, Christa vesiculata. And I wanted to acknowledge that I got pictures and a lot of information from prairiemoon.com, and I wrote them and they give us permission to use it as long as we let them know. So if
John, you stand closer to her computer so
Yes.
that we can get you on the Zoom.
okay,
Oh, the
so
audio.
if you would like to do this, that's a great resource to use. So you can see a nice yellow flower, little red centerpiece. It is an annual, but it reseeds really well. I wouldn't say aggressively, but it does, when pods open up, they kind of pop out a little bit. And also, I use it as a ground cover, especially around tall things, because it will kind of encroach on the smaller stuff, but it pulls out really easily. So I wouldn't worry about that. And if maybe you've heard the term pioneer plant, it's one of the first type of plant that gets reestablished when there's been a disturbance. And so it grows fast, seeds fast, and will spread out. The leaves they're small, thin, symmetrical, kind of has a nice little look. As you can see from the sun and moisture, it's pretty wide range. I have a lot of part sun, and it does just fine there too. And then the germination code. So if you're not familiar with that, C means it needs cold, moist stratification, and 10 is the number of days. So, and then there can be several different germination codes. So if you don't plant it in the fall, H means you should scarify it. So just lightly sand it with sandpaper. But if you plant it, I've never done that. I just plant it in the fall. And then I, it's for legume. It's like if you want to use an inoculant just to provide the bacteria to help us do its thing, which I don't know much about that piece. And it is native Minnesota. Some of the wildlife benefits, it's really fun. I had a pretty thick planting, and one morning I was out there, I just heard this, I counted over a couple dozen of them just in the flowers there, and they buzz pollinate, so they somehow use their wing muscles to vibrate, to access, I can't remember if it's nectar or pollen, is hard to dislodge on probably the pollen. Dislodge, and it just gets on them, and they can brush it down and get it that way. But it's a cool sound. Seeds for the birds in the winter. It is a host plant for 3 kinds of butterflies, and pests. I have never seen a rabbit or a deer eat it, but maybe there's just plenty of other things in my yard. So I don't know. It's not their favorite plant, at least. So it's kind of a cool seed pod, and if you're hoping to save the seeds, you do kind of have to watch. As soon as they dry out, they will start opening them up. And so I pick them not when they're green, but when they start to turn brown, put in a bag, and everyone wants to hear this, and those seeds going down on the paper bag. So, yes?
Why are there a bunch of seeds next to a diagram picture?
Good question. So that's just for contrast to see what the size of the seed is.
Oh,
And anyone remember chiclets in your childhood? It's kind of flat, shiny, maybe it's a little smaller than a chiclet. So, so does anybody else have anything you want to add for?
I want to know, is that pod color? That's really pretty color.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and it will hang on there too. Like you'll open up and hang on there for a while.
Does it bloom for just a short period or continuously?
I'd say it's pretty extensive, and they don't all come at the same time,
Okay.
so it's spread out for a long time.
how easy are they to grow from seed?
Really easy. Yeah, I've never had nothing trouble with that.
So you could just like put some down on the ground
Yes,
now. It would be,
yeah. It was one of the things that did really well in my wood chips
okay.
when I was just smothering the water. So I encourage you to, go ahead.
Did you mention that they what kind of conditions they're best in? Did you mention that?
Yeah, like this, how much
Yeah.
sun? Yeah, so,
Moisture, sun.
yeah, so they will do full sun and either dry or pretty moist, not real wet. Yeah, so if you would like to research something and who should they contact? Anyone in the board, and we'll get you signed up. I do have a few seats here, so I see where there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So go ahead and take it.
We did that when I used to do larger prairie restorations and stuff. We would put partridge pea in our seed mixes because it came up quickly.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay, check 1, 2, check. Sorry about that. We haven't even started, to be honest with you. This wasn't planned. I do present off the cuff, and I got to make sure I don't go off on tangents like I do sometimes. But it's all relevant. We've been doing these workshops, and I'll get into that more and more and more. But the most recent booklet that we've produced called Creating Resilient Landscapes. This is a fantastic booklet that kind of guides you through all the aspects of plant selection and design. Do it yourself, rain garden work is really, and more like soil health and all kinds of stuff. So I'm going to give some of these away, and I have like 6 of them, and I have like the previous version in here as well. And this one is called Creating a Resilient Yard. So this one's a little different. This one's the updated one. So anyway,
Are these on your website too?
they are on the bluethumb.org website, which I'll cover in a little bit. But bluethumb.org and resources, and this whole booklet's available in PDF. So save some paper, right? But I got a few hard copies here for y'all. So I got a question. Does anybody know how many lakes there are in the state of Minnesota? Throw some numbers out. 1,000,000, 15,000, 13,200. Okay, now I got to make sure, how do I advance? There we go. So 10 acres or more is what they measure a lake. Now, of course, a 5-acre lake's still pretty nice size too, right? But according to this source, which I don't know exactly where it's from, 11,842. So who was closest? That wants a book.
Joe knew it.
Yeah? So here, Joe. Good job. Right on. So yeah, I mean, we got a lot of lakes, and that's not to mention wetlands, streams, and rivers. And I love the other fact that we've got 9,000 miles of shoreline, more than California, Florida, and Hawaii combined. That is a mind-blowing number that just, it's hard to believe, to be honest with you. But according to the DNR, they say that that's true. So, we've got the origin of the mighty Mississippi River. I was actually born in Mississippi. It's kind of another long story, which I'm not going to go into. But I do want to paddle it someday. That's like kind of a bucket list all the way down to the Gulf. I don't know. We'll see if I can do it. Lots of wetlands, but of course our wetlands are in major, have been reduced significantly, mainly due to tiling and agriculture reasons. But the other really important thing to understand is how many are impaired. And 56% in 2020 were impaired in one way or another, biologically, nutrient. And so I worked for the Metropolitan Council before I started grad school, and I studied non-point source pollution. And that is all of the stormwater runoff that enters the receiving water bodies all over the place. And so we were trying to get a handle on what contributes more, like wastewater treatment plants or stormwater runoff. And we studied streams all the way from Jordan in the Minnesota River up to the confluence at Bedote, and then all the way down to Lake Pepin. And this is the confluence of the St. Croix and the Mississippi. This is after the Minnesota River flows into the Mississippi, mind you, which is a very, very polluted river. But it's just amazing that where it's mixing, it's like the chocolate milk of all the suspended solids and really nasty polluted waters. So my focus has always been water quality in my work before I started with Metro Blooms. My undergrad was environmental sciences at Mankato State University, that's what it was called back then. And I also had a degree in urban and regional planning. And I wanted to try to figure out how to allow cities to grow and develop and redevelop without destroying their natural environment. That's a pretty tall task. and difficult thing to accomplish. And I'd like to think that, you know, we're making a big dent in that. And our partners at watershed districts and folks like you and spreading, you know, the word of what people can do on their landscape to improve that water quality. We all have a connection to water in one way or another. I like to, you know, encourage you all to think about your relationship with water, your relationship with nature, your relationship with pollinators and insects. And everyone has a different story. This is one where my brother and I took my dad up to the Boundary Waters for the first time of his life when he was in his late 70s. And he had a heck of a time making it over those portages. But we helped him, and we're like, you just got to get from point A to point B. We'll help you along the way, and we'll carry everything else. So that was a very special moment. And my buddy was at this campsite. I knew he was going to be on the lake, but I didn't know what site. And we're like paddling by, and he had a really nice camera, and he took this picture. And I'm like, oh, we turned this into a puzzle. So I've been to the Boundary Waters maybe a dozen times. So please, let's protect those resources, if you know what I mean. But protect all of our water resources in the great state of Minnesota and wherever we can, where we live, here in the Twin Cities. Another thing that I like to do is I like to make beautiful ice luminaries. I'm a big time volunteer for the Luminary Elopet, and we made these huge balloons that are bigger than your head. And that's what this picture is when we were hatching them. That's just a big ice, and then we put a hole in it, and then we drain the water out, and we put candles in them. And has anybody heard of this, the Luminary Lopet on Lake of the Isles? How many of these globe luminaries do you think we made for the Luminary Lopet this year? Guess?
2,500.
500, 2,000, another one?
6,000.
We made 900 of them.
Wow.
So, did you get it? Okay. I got another one. So we got more. So we made 900 of them. But it's like, I'm looking at, like when we're pouring the water in the balloons, I'm like, the smell of the water is a little off. I'm not going to drink it. It's water from Lake of the Isles, and we just pump it into this system to make these things.
Actually freezes?
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, it freezes overnight. I mean, we do this also when it was like about 6 below. Yep. And yeah, so, but you know, and the color, it's not bad. I mean, you can see my jacket through that ice, right? It's not as cloudy as you'd think, so pretty good. So anyway, kind of a fun thing. And I love taking pictures. I got a macro lens for my camera about 8 years ago, and I've been taking these wonderful photos. Sulfur butterfly on New England aster. And I saw my first rusty patch bumblebee last year. Hooray, I've been doing this work for over a dozen years, and I finally found my first rusty patch on Culver's root, of all plants. And it was so exciting when I finally, I'm like,
And you got a picture of it?
and I got a picture of it.
Oh.
That's this photo. I actually have a couple better ones. I couldn't, but anyway, yes. Yeah, you can barely, if you zoom in on the back, you can kind of see it just a little bit. You guys see that? It's a rusty, and I sent my image to Heather home right away. And I'm like, Heather, can you verify this? As I know if anyone can do it, it's Heather. And I'm going to pass a couple of things out as I'm talking. These are some resources for Heather's books for her that she sends around. You guys can look at that. But I want these back because they're laminated in this part of my my deal. Yeah, so God, was that exciting. And that was at my mom and dad's house in New Brighton, which is where I live now. And there's a big rain garden in the front yard, and I put Culver's root in the front yard, and then I was cutting them down and putting them in the compost site at the end, and those seeds made it into the back garden. And sure enough, there they were. And you know, those Culver's root, they're kind of on the edge of the path. And I'm like, they're, you know, starting to block the path a little bit, but I let them go, and I'm glad I did. So I did not see them last year, but they say that, the rusty patch comes back, it usually nests pretty close by. So hopefully I'll see him again this summer. Some other photos that I've taken, you guys will recognize probably a lot of these plants. And of course, there's insects in these. And so, we've been incorporating native plants into our rain gardens back when I started with Metro Blooms. But I'm just learning about those relationships between pollinators and the plants that they survive with in host plants and that. So it's super exciting. And then the darner, that dragonfly. Oh my God. In my apartment in Minneapolis that I lived in 22 years, those dragonflies would be hanging out and I would just sit there and watch them in the sky and they just be darting all over the place. And you know that they're chowing down on insects. They're the most efficient predators of all the winged animals. They are incredible. How many mosquitoes that those things eat a day? It was a couple hundred, I think, or is that any? Yeah, I don't know. They eat a lot of mosquitoes. Okay. And I love the picture on the lower right. It's a long-tongued bumblebee. I don't know what species on showy goldenrod. I call that the Gene Simmons of the bumblebees. I love that. The tongue is just like yeah, it's exciting when you start seeing all this life come into your yards, right? And then sharing them with your friends. So I work for Metro Bloom's Design Build, which is owned by Metro Bloom's nonprofit. It's really an interesting relationship. 4 years ago, we branched off. So Metro Blooms is a nonprofit that partners with communities to nurture and support thriving ecosystems, land and water. We practice shared leadership and care, moving towards environmental justice. And we've been working in environmental justice work for probably 7 years. And it's probably one of the most meaningful things of my career, working with renters and affordable housing communities to create outdoor spaces and leverage funding from watershed districts and counties and cities to improve the outdoor spaces that the community is asking for. And we work with communities primarily of color and lower income to give agency to people who, in the areas that they live in and make decisions. And so it's really powerful work. And Metro Bloom's Design Build, I'm a now we have 2 registered landscape architects working for us and 4 other designers. And so we support the same mission, of course, as Metro Blooms. And I had to read it because we just changed our mission just recently. We go through this process every 3 to 5 years. So we just changed it. But it was very similar before. And so we provide design, installation, and I want to say land care services, it is maintenance, but I don't like the word maintenance. I always use the word land care because we care about things that we love more than, just maintain, like got to maintain my car, change the brakes and all that and the oil. Caring for something just means a lot more, and it hopefully will encourage people to act more, right? To take care of their landscapes. So yeah, we do all that work, of course, fee for service. So it's kind of pushing what a nonprofit could do. And then we also manage the Blue Thumb program, and I mentioned that earlier. It's a great statewide partnership of public and private organizations, and our education program is run through that, provide resources for all of Minnesotans and beyond because it's on the World Wide Web. So if they want to use it, they can, whoever, to plant for clean water. It's focusing on water quality and clean water, but of course, habitat for pollinators because that's the best plants that we have. And I'm going to go all into that. We got a great staff. We got about 15, 20, depending on seasonal workers. It's a great organization, and it's kind of, all jobs are challenging, right? But I kind of step back and think about what my dream job is, and I keep on coming back to this. So it's pretty awesome. I get to work all over the metro and sometimes statewide doing workshops for like Board of Soil Water Resources up in Duluth and down in Rochester. So it's pretty exciting. We do workshops, education, and done a lot of workshops with Rice Creek Watershed. And last couple of years now, we've been doing Maintenance, we call them maintenance. We should call them land care workshops.
Changing the words.
It's the word,
Communication. stuff.
it's the words that we use, you know, and it really does make a difference.
Especially when we're talking. about this.
Mm-hmm. Because I can be the best designer in the whole world, which I'm not, but I could be. And if it's not cared for properly, the landscape's just not going to look great. And so that land care is so critical. That's one of the biggest lessons learned in the work. But again, community engagement, I kind of went over that a little bit. Design, installation, land care, maintenance is all services that we provide. All right, I better start flying because I have a lot of slides to go through.
Your slide isn't going on that screen.
Oh, what's going on with that?
It was flickering.
Oh,
I
no.
know, it's okay on the Zoom, but it's not up there, that's why I knew.
Okay.
Maybe-
Thank you.
Maybe,
I'm not sure what to do other than, should I unplug it and plug it back in?
we might be about that today, haven't we, Kendrick?
See what happens.
Talk to Roosevelt. There we go.
Yeah, thank you. Keep an eye on me. Okay, hold on, folks. I gotta
Probably should-
share my screen.
Sorry.
All right. Now, hopefully
Perfect.
the next slide will go because I'm on the next slide already. All right. So resources. One of the big things I think why I was asked to come and present to you all is to share the resources that we have for everybody to build some habitat in their property. So I'm going to pass some other templates that we've developed. These are all available on our website. These are just a few of them. And you can kind of look at these as we're going. There's 3 of them. Yeah. And I may as well just do this one. I'm not sure where this is from, to be honest. Go US Gov. I don't know. But this is the Rusty Patch Bumblebee Midwest. Do you recognize that? Awesome plant list. Take a picture of it. Picture's worth 1,000 words. It'll last longer. Yeah. So I mentioned we do workshops, and so we do planting for clean water workshops, focusing on rain gardens and water quality. Planting for pollinators, focusing on pollinator health and biodiversity of plants that benefit pollinators, trees, shrubs, perennials, and ground covers. We also do the maintenance workshops, land care workshops, and healthy shorelines. We're really focusing more and more on shoreline work, which is really exciting. And yeah, we also have the Plant Finder tool, and that is a great resource where you can isolate the parameters of your site, and you can boil it down to a handful of plants that would be best suitable. And I'm trying to think if the partridge pea is on that, because partridge pea isn't annual, and I don't know if it's on there, but that is a great plant. It's a great plant. So, and yeah, I have used it in projects. So, yeah, the Plant Finder tool is a fantastic tool on there. There are some free video resources on the website as well. That was all kind of that, and a lot of these templates kind of came from the Lawns to Legumes program. Has anyone been awarded a Lawns to Legume grant? There's a few folks. And so that's why you've tried, but you have not gotten it. Well, hopefully they'll continue it. They're negotiating. It's been like 4+ years, millions of dollars have gone into restoring habitat for a rusty patch bumblebee, which is a generalist. And so all of the plants that we put in to benefit Rusty, which in this booklet, and the plant lists in this booklet, everything that's highlighted in here is benefits the rusty patch, including bee balm, which is the superfood, right? What percentage of rusty is left? Does anybody know in the state from what was here pre-colonial times?
Like 2%.
Ding, ding.
Yeah, it was, so really, it's all about, thank you.
You're welcome. think it is 1-2%, debatable. Pretty good though. Yeah, so boy, in these workshops, we walk people through how to assess their yard, their landscape, and start to prioritize where to put their resources to do their first project, or to do their next project, right? And oftentimes that might be like near a water spigot or where you're going to see it more often coming and going from your property, so that you're not only can enjoy it more, but also when you see maybe those weeds popping up, you're like, oh, I better get to that like right now. So, we help folks through that process. So if you've never taken one of our workshops, I'd encourage you to explore doing that. We have a whole handful of them coming up. So back to pollen. Yeah.
I mentioned something quick about workshops. I will have some in the area sometime soon. And I usually waive the fee if you live in Rice Creek Watershed District. So just I will communicate that to y'all now that I'm here, but we have some plans in spring, summer, and then fall, but
Rice
they're not
Creek,
official yet.
Rice Creek Watershed is awesome. By the way, they helped. I didn't put any pictures of the rain garden that I built in my parents' front yard, which is now my front yard. I think it was like 10 years ago, and it's 1452 2nd Street Southwest, if anyone can remember that. Let me know if you want to come and look at it. I have other giveaways. I'm just going to hand these all out right now. I got seed packs from MnDOT, and these seeds are fantastic. I got 10 packets. If you guys want one, you can have them. These are from the state fair, so hopefully they're still really viable, and all that. And then these are flyers of Metro Blooms, and explains what we do. So you want to pass them out. I only have 10, so if you guys don't get one, you'll have to or you can put them on the back table and grab them on your way out. Thank you. Okay, so I think we all know why pollinators are so important. I'm not going to go too deep into, well, it gets repetitive and redundant, but I'm going to go into some projects in a little bit. But yeah, I remember, when I first learned that, that these butterflies, bees, bugs, birds have co-evolved with the plants, native plants, which are plants that are about 200 miles from where we are now, is kind of the definition that the Board of Soil Water Resources uses. And so that's the definition that I use. Some might say 150 miles, some might say a little bit more. But it's just really exciting to understand, again, that relationship that they've co-evolved. And I don't have a roots display image in my presentation, but just understanding how far down the roots go and how resilient native plants are in our landscape once they get established. And it does take, a good 2 to 3 years for these plants to get established. It's really important to understand that. And that's when the most intensive care is needed in our landscapes. It's like, raising a small child. Like, you really need to give a lot more care to the young until they can stand on their own. And so really important. Native plants are uniquely positioned to provide the right nutrition for wildlife. And, I think of some of the cultivars and other plants. It's kind of like junk food. And, it's just not very good for their immune systems. And the native, high protein pollen, especially in the spring, blooming plants for those emerging bumblebees. I don't know if I got a picture of a willow, but salix is a really, really good woody species to plant for the spring, because those emerging rusty patch bumblebee queens and all of her friends are coming out, and they're hungry. And willow is one of the very, very first to provide that high protein pollen. So that's a really good one. Planting for native plants is a way to create pollinator habitat. And of course, how we manage and maintain our landscapes impacts pollinators and, of course, water quality. So, we, of course, do not recommend using any pesticides, neonicotinoids, All of the Blue Thumb partners, there's one section on the website that helps you find growers that all prescribe to the same values and not using neonicotinoids and systemic pesticides in their production of plants. And we're also pushing hard to some of the non-partners too. I've got a friend who works for Bachman's, and I'm like, when are you guys going to say that you're absolutely, nicotinoid free? And they're like, well, we get our plants from places that are native plants that aren't using it, but some of their other woody species still do. So it's really hard for them to actually say that they are, and I get that. But anyway, it's a hot topic in a way. All right, it's flipping through. I want to talk about some of those really awesome relationships again. We know that milkweed and monarchs are, are critical for one another. And I didn't think about this one. Does anybody know how many milkweed species there are in Minnesota? Does anyone know?
30.
30, no, but that's a good guess. And I'm not 100% sure either now.
7.
Yeah, it seems like 7 or 8.
7 or 8. So I'm going to do a live demonstration. Let's see here. Milkweed, Minnesota wildflowers. So whenever I use my phone, I'm using voice command all the time now because it's so easy. And I'm also cross-referencing the species with Minnesota wildflowers. They're not a partner of Blue Thumb, but I've been using them ever since I've known to use a website. And so when I go there and let's check out the genus, there's 14. Oh wait, so there's 14 that are listed. And who had the closest to 14? Who wants a book? Anybody want a book? Okay. This is last year's version. We haven't the older version, and I have some more of the newer ones too. 14. Wow. Well, of course, that's like the very, very southern driftless region of Minnesota and the North Woods, right? And so there's a lot of variation between our southern and northern border, right? But like commercially available, I can think of a good 6 that I use quite often: swamp milkweed or rose milkweed. They have more than one common name in rain garden basins where it likes it wet. And the beautiful orange butterfly weed, loves it in the hot, dry edges of gardens. I guess they don't do quite so well in clay, but apparently it's a cultivar that does a little bit better. I can talk about cultivars in a little bit, or native vars in a little bit. But anyway, back to this slide. Pearly everlasting and what is that? The painted lady butterfly. What a cool thing, like if you plant this one species, you're more likely to attract this butterfly. And one thing I learned at a workshop, we worked with Minnesota master gardeners, Hennepin County master gardeners in our workshops when we break out into groups. And a master gardener like 6 years ago told me, she's like, the golden Alexander attracts the swallowtail butterfly. And I'm like, really? That's so cool. I didn't know that. And I guess like dill or carrot, like plants that are in the dill carrot tract. And I had a whole bunch of this stuff growing next to my apartment building. I planted it next to columbine, which I just love the combination of spring plants coming up early in the spring. And I love golden Alexander because it's like fireworks. And you look at it, it's like the umbrella effect of it. It's just so cool. I saw that summer after I was told that, sure enough, I saw one coming in, that butterfly coming in and dabbing its abdomen in there and laying eggs.
Just a quick thing, I learned the hard way about the painted lady.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, but I had a lot of pearly everlasting along the curve, and it looked icky, so I cut the icky parts off. That was the eggs.
Oh, that was the eggs? Oh my goodness.
It really looks ugly.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that though, because it's kind of like, that's actually a really good story because, it's like we have an aesthetic and we want things to, we don't want bugs eating our plants. We don't want discolored or mildew on the milkweed, or I'm sorry, the bee balm oftentimes gets mildewy but why are we growing this stuff? And of course it's for us, but it's also for the wildlife. And the more we understand those relationships, and now that you might be a little bit more tolerant to not cut those
Or excited.
out. Or you're like, oh, these, and put a little sign there that says, this looks icky, but these are eggs of the swallowtail butterfly. Wow. I think people would really respect that. That's pretty cool. I kind of got goosebumps thinking about it. So Liatris, this is metal blazing star, I believe. I'm a more common name and not a scientific name, but does anybody know the scientific name of metal blazing star?
Beatrice.
Is that right?
I think so.
Ligus
Like it's a
Ligustylus? Who said Ligustylus?
Yeah, right.
You're right. The first word is Liatris. And like I think there's like, maybe I should go to the old website again. I think there's 5 maybe different varieties of Liatris. And this is like a lot of the species, like goldenrod. And there's multiple subspecies that thrive in different conditions. There's a milkweed, poke milkweed, that grows in the shade. And it's like, what? I didn't know there's a milkweed that grows in the shade. And sure enough, and it does, it's not as showy, but it still benefits the monarch, and it will grow in the shade, which there's of course less plants that grow in the shade. So it's good to know. Right on. So this is the swallowtail on that, because that's more of a generalist, but the nectar is just like candy. And you plant one of these and you're very likely to get, like 5 or 6 monarchs just nectaring on it before they start to fly south. So you guys probably know a lot of this. Habitat. So I'm going to go into a brief gloom. We only have 2% of the native prairies left in the state. It's really devastating, of course, to climate change and agriculture and urbanization and all of those devastating effects to what was here pre-colonial times 200 years ago. And as a landscape designer and architect, I find opportunities everywhere I look to restore habitat. And there's a big debate on whether we restore it back to what it was or to what it could be with all the other things that have happened. And so we do the best that we can. And a big part of what I'm looking at is hydrology back to stormwater management as well. Because again, as we developed in the landscape, I kind of think of it as a 30-70. Of course, it's more or less depending on how dense the developments have occurred. But pre-development, when it rained hard, maybe 30% of the surface runoff would go to streams. And after development, 70% goes to the streams. Of course, it depends on how dense it is and all that, and that's debatable. But you get the point. Is all these impervious surfaces, all the buildings, all of the compaction that we've done to our landscapes and the lawns that have shallow root systems. We call lawns green concrete for a reason, because a massive amount of runoff comes from our lawns, which has higher phosphorus loads, especially if you're fertilizing and mowing. And even if you're mowing and just mulching mowing, all of that green stuff is washing into our waterways. And so, it's a big problem. The average property can produce 40,000 gallons of runoff a year. And I don't know about you, but I would like to go swimming in like Cedar Lake, which was the lake that was closest to where I lived. Lake of the Isles is kind of nasty, but it's a shallow, it was a swamp. It was wetland before they dredged it in like 18 whatever. But that's Powderhorn Lake. And of course, this phosphorus. Does anybody know how many pounds of algae can grow, wet algae, from 1 pound of phosphorus? Do I have any more?
Is it 500?
Boom.
I was gonna say 5, but I was like.
You are correct. I don't have any more of my things, but you probably have these, right?
Yeah.
Because I grabbed these for myself, but this is the last one here. So if anyone doesn't have this, the attracting butterflies with your native gardens. All right, good job. You just get a pat on the back. Yeah, so that's nasty. I want to go swimming and not get the itchies, right? And so I want to try to treat that stormwater on site. And that's why like Rice Creek Watershed and other watersheds are investing so much money into helping people. So what'd you say, $10,000 you guys have for your cost share for water quality projects?
You can get up to 10,000.
Up to
Yeah,
10,000.
we have a smaller one that's
The 500.
Another 10,000. But your project has to be really good to get that.
Right on. Well, those are types of things that I help design, and like that's the stuff. And there's a lot of other great designers and to help you with that work. So, organizations like Rice Creek Watershed are investing to help prevent that from happening. When I worked for the Met Council sampling water, there was a massive fish kill in the upper reaches of Lake Pepin. Lake Pepin is a natural lake that's caused by the river in the south of it from Wisconsin. I can't remember what river that is now. It's been so long. But anyway, it's a natural, before the dams were even there was a lake. Or yeah, before the lock and dams were put in. And as water slows down, then all the sediment drops, and then that's when algae blooms happen. And so then it takes the oxygen out of the water, and then any aquatic life can't survive, and fish start to float. So there's a lot of reasons to be motivated to do this type of work on your landscapes. And if you're a fisher person, then that might be one reason to do it. If you like dragonflies, that might be another reason, because dragonflies need clean water, right? They live 2 years of their life underwater, chowing down mosquito larvae with their snapper jaws. It's so cool. Yeah. Oh, I got arrows. You guys get the picture. I forgot about that. Salt, of course, is a huge problem. Smart salting right now. Oh my God. It's just like whenever I go to Cub Foods or any, like, it's just like, and my folks now moved into a senior housing place by Langdon Lake. And it's like, oh, I understand that we got to salt our walks because we don't want anyone slipping and falling and breaking their hip. But my God, like we can do better. And Freshwater Society put out a study, this has probably been like 6 years ago now, that showed the trajectory of like chloride concentrations in some of our urban lakes. And Johanna and Josephine were up there. And I think what I remember is like by the time I retire, which will be never, so, by the time I'm 6 feet under, those lakes might not be able to support life because they're going to be too salty. And of course, the solution to pollution is dilution, and diluting salt, of course, is the only way to make it reduced as it gets flushed out. It's still building up more than what it can flush. And so the concentration in those lakes are going up. So it's important to understand that 1 teaspoon of salt permanently contaminates 5 gallons of water, and it's a big problem. So what can you do on your yard, just generally? Keep that yard waste out of the system, out of the storm drain. Collecting your leaves. Don't mow towards the street. Oh, when people mow and all the grass clippings are in the street, it just drives me crazy. And I just want to like go out there and give them a lecture, and they're probably not going to like that. So, clean up after your pet waste. It's a law, right? E. coli. And if you have like shoreline property, put in a nice big buffer, and like those geese that poop everywhere, they're not going to hopefully come up onto your property because they're going to be afraid that maybe a coyote is lurking in those high weeds, and they're going to like not hang out in those places. So that's kind of a cool thing to understand. Avoid fertilizers and pesticides. Fertilizers like or the commercial fertilizers, you add it year after year after year, and it will accumulate in that top layer of your lawn, and it gets more and more compacted and more dense, and it becomes more and more like green concrete over time. And why do we do it? Because people want green lawns, but it's a huge problem. Raise that mower blade 3 inches minimum, and water with intention. Another pet peeve is when you see those sprinkler systems irrigating the sidewalks and the streets. It's like, come on. And please, put in a moisture sensor so they're not going off in the middle of a rain event. It's just ridiculous. And like, we have solutions, and I think that there's a good place for irrigation systems, especially to get projects established. Because you do got to water it if it's a drought, right? And I'll get into that in a bit. And then back into that winter time, shovel, chop, shovel, get that pack off the surface as quickly as possible. If you need traction, use grit, chicken grit, or crushed granite. You can sweep it up and use it again. Wow. And maybe get some exercise while you're at it. And avoid using salt at all costs unless you absolutely have to. Okay. Let's get into quick design focus. Yeah. I'm going to drink a little water. Does anybody know what percentage of the human body is water?
60%.
60%, give or take. Yes. Oh, I wish I had something. You get another pat on the back. That's good. It's crazy. It's like I've been doing this jumping up and down thing to get the body. And it's like, okay, there's a lot of water going up and down. Okay, so our focus of our work, rain gardens, native plantings, and pollinators, this is like the stack benefits of doing this work. It's just amazing. And not even talking about community yet. And that's really where my love shine. I love bringing community together. And by the way, I've been wanting to come to your meetings for a long time. I live now in New Brighton. I lived in New Brighton. I went to Irondale, graduated in 90. Now I'm telling you my age. And I normally curl on Thursday nights, and I got someone to sub for me tonight. So I'm really happy to be here again, because otherwise I always joke. I'm like, Jesus, I'm walking on water on the curling rink. Yeah, community. Like, you guys share experiences and knowledge and lift everybody up together. And that's just awesome. And that's a big part of what we do at Metro Blooms. And what I love my job so much. And that's not even listed in here, but the stack benefits. Yeah. So does anyone want to know what a rain garden is? Does everyone try just a really quick 101? Yeah. So we want to make sure that the base of a rain garden is a minimum 10 feet away from your house. That's assuming that you've got a basement that's 10 feet deep. So let's say you've got a retaining wall that's 4 feet, or you have a garden level house that might be a walkout or garden that, so I always tell people it's like a 1-to-1 rule. So if the wall is 4 feet deep, you want to keep the basin at least 4 feet away. If basement's 10, so if you've got a garage that's got a slab of concrete that's 4-6 inches with other, you want to, that's 1 foot. You want to keep at least 1 to 2 feet away from like a slab on grade. So that's distances, and that's like minimums. And if you can go further is better. You want to capture that stormwater runoff safely. All rain gardens are modified perennial beds. They're just shallow depressions in the landscape that allows that concentrated stormwater to slow down and infiltrate and drop out those suspended solids, the pollution that's in that water. We design rain gardens to capture the 1 inch in 24-hour rain event. And the first flush of storm events is the highest concentration of pollution. If you think about like when we have a drought or, just like a couple of weeks without rain, and that wind is kicking up everywhere and there's just dust accumulating everywhere, well, then where's that dust go when it rains? right down in the storm drain. So if we're capturing that first flush, then we're doing a lot of good. There's a little talk of like flooding mitigation and that, and I actually was just I was listening to a discussion at University of Minnesota St. Anthony Falls lab today. And the gentleman from Villanova out east was presenting, and he's like, these systems really aren't gonna like stop hurricane floods. You know, that's just a whole nother monster. And unfortunately, with our changing climate, we know that our rain events are getting more intense and less frequent, right? And so it's really a difficult time to manage all that stormwater runoff, but still the first flush is captured in these systems, which is doing a massive amount of good and preventing that pollution in the waterways. So 90% of the gardens I design are only 6 inches deep. They're always measured, the depth of a rain garden is measured from the overflow point. I wonder if I can use the pointer on this. Woo. Oh boy, no, anyway. Let's see, laser pointer. Ooh, hey. So yeah, like, you know, that fine dash line is like the existing grade. It's a subtle, typically when they build houses and grade the yards, it's like 2% slope. That's 1 inch and 4 feet of drop away from your house. And a lot of times it's more than that. And the old houses, sometimes it's opposite because, you know, there's pockets of air and it's all settled, and then you got reverse drainage is what we call that. You want positive drainage away from your structures. And that is sometimes like if you've got that situation, you're putting a rain garden, what do you do with the soil that you're excavating? Well, one of the things you can do is put it around your foundation to create that positive drainage again. So that's one thing that you can do with it. Another thing you can do with it is what I call micro topography. Hold that thought, because my other elevator speech is just like, if you have concentrated stormwater from your property that's getting away during a rain event, then I'd encourage you to install a rain garden to try to slow down, capture, and infiltrate or soak in that water. And so that's really important. The other thing is, I always tell people, it's like, if the only reason why you're walking on your lawn is to mow it, maybe you should consider converting some of that into pollinator habitat. And wouldn't it be great if everyone converted 50% of their yards at least to pollinator habitat? That'd be incredible. And of course, you can just do it with the existing grade that's going on. You can create these depressions in the landscape for rain gardens, and you could even create berms and other areas, mounds of dirt, and then you're setting up an awesome moisture regime of dry, medium, wet throughout your landscapes, which then facilitates more biodiversity, more plants that you can choose from when you're putting in new plants in your yard. So that's kind of, I want to develop a whole new presentation on that whole concept and how you can like build that into your landscape. And, you know, if you got some time, you can do it, you know, it does take time, right? A lot of effort too. I got a pretty strong back, a lot of wheelbarrow work. Always call Gopher State 1 811 before you dig. Utilities are a problem, especially if it's like telecommunications. Your gas lines are usually down about 18 inches to 2 feet, but you never really know, so that could be a problem. These are typically planted with perennials, so it's not horrible if they get ripped up because we're putting in a utility. You can always restore it easier than if it's a tree or a shrub, right? But you want to know where those utilities are. Your sanitary and your water line are below frost. They're not a problem. You can put rain gardens on top of them all day. No big deal. But knowing that it's a possibility that those might get ripped up if the city needs to work. So that's important to know. And then lastly, trees. You want to know where your canopy drip line of your tree is. That's where the most prevalent root systems are. Of course, roots go beyond that canopy extent, but they're not quite as big and as fibrous, and they regenerate. And most trees are hydrophilic. They love water, And so they'll regenerate. When you put a rain garden in, they'll go to that. So we usually try to stay out of the drip line. You can put shallower rain gardens within the drip line. And just knowing that you don't want to change the hydrology too much, especially if it's an oak tree and you want to learn about oak wilt and the problems of disturbing those trees during certain periods of time because they're more susceptible to disease. And that's important to understand. Yeah, so lots of benefits, reducing the heat island effect. In the heart of the city, it's a lot warmer, right, than the rural areas because of all the concrete and steel that's holding the radiant heat. And even perennials are a lot cooler in that land than the lawn. It's just amazing. Of course, we talked about providing quality food and habitat for wildlife, sequestering carbon. Those root systems are amazing. There's more carbon in the prairie than there is in the forest, in a traditional historic prairie. Unbelievable. The amount of carbon that's being pulled into the earth. And of course, beauty. But beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? We know that sometimes neighbors are not too crazy about those native plants when they're not looking good and they're not blooming as long. So that's, of course, where signage comes in. But yeah, this is a project that we did off of Marshall Street in South Minneapolis or Northeast Minneapolis. And highlighted in this picture is cardinal flower and lobelia. It's a lobelia, and the blue lobelia and the cardinal flower are cousins. And I learned that from a master gardener that these are not likely to persist and come back year after year unless they self-seed. So similar to the partridge pea, which is an annual. This is a perennial, but it's almost like also like the black-eyed Susans are similar too. And so I learned that if you just take a little rake and just rough up the soil around these things, then they're more likely to come back. That was a little trick that I learned from a master gardener. But of course, other benefits is just, low chemical inputs. They don't need to be fertilized. And fantastic. This is a great image of some imagery that we did to talk about connecting and corridors. And, we know that different pollinators have different fly zones and how far away that they'll go. And I think it's like 2 miles for the bumblebee. Of course, the monarch will be thousands of miles as they go to Mexico. But the smaller ones might just be your yard. And so, if you're just providing a little bit of food in your yard, and if there's nothing in your neighbors, maybe the smallest pollinator might not be able to survive as well. So, of course, the corridors are reinforced along like major natural areas like the river and Minnehaha Creek and the lakes and the parkways. But we're slowly knitting together. This is, of course, Minneapolis, and I'd like to see this. Do you guys do any corridor mapping of pollinator habitat and like GIS work and offsetting the distance of all of your known pollinator gardens and starting to see those patterns emerge?
Need our engineer staff to do it, but
If you paid your engineer staff. It's really fascinating. And the other thing that emerges on this is where is there gaps? And sadly enough, it's also in environmental justice communities in South Minneapolis, North Minneapolis. And that's another reason why we're pouring our efforts into those communities because they have not been invested in the past. And they've been disinvested and they just haven't, the parks and everything, everything is changing, in the last decade, I think. But it's really, really important. We are a product of our environment. And so exposure to nature, of course, is very healthy to our mental and physical health. And so, yeah, that's really important to restore our projects everywhere for our landscapes. We talked about these species already. This is a wonderful, on the right is a wonderful grouping of plants that you guys might recognize. And so, yeah, it might be a little bit tall on the edges, you know, in planting design, I'm always kind of like, you know, short plants in front, tall plants in back. We have a tendency to want plants that are isolated and not grouped together sometimes, like traditional gardening. And I think I have a whole slide on matrix design, and I'll get into that. I better start flying. I already talked about Rusty. Awesome. This is my garden in Uptown when I lived there for 22 years. And it was amazing. Like the Joe Pye weed just petered out in the middle because it just, when we had like 2, 3 years of drought, it didn't have enough moisture. And it was really interesting. And the purple coneflower just took over like crazy, which isn't even actually native to Minnesota, but it is, you know, come in and is doing quite well. And it's still, Echinacea is a wonderful species to plant. But that 3 years later, I had a Joe Pye weed pop up next to my water spigot. And that reel of water was like leaking. So it was constantly moist over by that. And so it popped up. I'm like, oh my God, there it is. So it's really fascinating, you know, right plant for the right place. You need the right moisture regimes for some plants to persist. And so that was kind of a neat observation. This is one of my most favorite photos that I've taken. And I want to believe that this is a rusty patch bumblebee, but I know it's not. It's a common Eastern, I think, common Eastern bumblebee. It's got that little dot in the back. But it's just finished nectaring on bee balm, Monarda fistulosa. And I want to believe that this is the happiest bumblebee in the whole state at that moment in time. It's just like, and I don't know what they get out of these things, but I know that like Monarda is a superfood for the bumblebee. And I also know that if we eat it, has anyone eaten a flower head of Monarda? No one has? I don't know if I'd recommend it. I've done it. And it's like an aseptic, it makes your mouth go numb. Not bad. It does recover, but it does. And it's like, wow, like what is this doing to these bees' immune systems? And they just gobble it up, right? So it's really fascinating. I love this.
Not eating the whole flower.
Not eating the whole flower, maybe, yes. And I'm like, oh, what does this do? And I chew it. I do silly things. Now I know, and I can talk about it. Site prep, oftentimes we'll add 1 to 2 inches of organic compost into our projects and uncompact that soil. If it has been like a lawn that we have stripped of, you know, we'll often use sod cutters to remove that sod. And, you know, remember the Kentucky bluegrass perennial rye root systems are very shallow. And so that soil is very compacted underneath that environment. So loosening that up, but we're ripping it up. We're not using a tiller. That's really important to know. And then we're mixing in that organic compost because that's natural fertilizer. It helps the soil retain moisture so that these plants can get established as quickly as possible. And then we'll cover it with 2 to 3 inches of double shredded hardwood mulch. And that keeps the moisture in the soil. It suppresses weeds. It covers the seed bank of other weeds that might be weed seeds that might be in the soil. And we find that to be the best way to go. And then of course, weeding and watering weekly, if you can, monthly is really important. I think I have a whole nother slide on watering, but I'm running out of time. Planting styles. So when I started doing planting designs, I was clumping my plants like 3, 5, 7. I don't know why, but someone felt that odd numbers were really comfortable. But I don't know. And so, large groupings of plants also, provide this, when they're full on in bloom, that's where all the good food is for these pollinators. So they don't have to spend as much energy going from plant to plant because they're all in one area. So that's one good reason to do it in that method.
Looks nice.
And it looks nice. Right. And sometimes like I was showing you, the other in my garden, plants will migrate and they'll move around, and you might need to do a little editing if you want to keep them in that separate, separate containers, if you will, or areas. There's wonderful plants in the shade, and the booklet that I gave out, there's a great shade template. And in our Blue Thumb website, there's some great templates for shade gardens. And they're not quite as showy. Probably the showiest is like the wild geranium, in really shady areas. But there's a lot like zigzag goldenrod is another really good one that I like to use in the fall, where the geranium, of course, blooms in the spring. And the wild ginger, man, I'm like, they have flowers, and I don't have a picture of one, but that little flower underneath the leaf, it's really cool. And I've never planted mayapple. Does anyone have any mayapple in their yards? What do you think of that stuff? Is that pretty cool? Oh yeah.
It's interesting.
It's interesting. It adds texture. Yeah, just like ferns. Yeah. How about ostrich ferns? Does anyone have a good relationship with them?
They take over.
They take over. I just had to throw it out there. Yeah. So another method that we've been using more and more and more of lately is called the matrix style planting method. And that's using a variety of sedges and grasses, native grasses, in a pattern about 18 inches on center. And then we'll go in and we'll put forbs in between those. And if you think of like a traditional prairie, it's like 80, 90% grasses, right? And then you've got some seasonal blooming forbs in between. So, back to like those plants that are like flopping over, if they're planted in a matrix, then they're going to be more likely to stay up. But also, we're planting more densely now than we were traditionally. And so that's helping to keep the weeds down, undesirable plants, so that everything can get established faster. So we have a template for that. And someone mentioned boulevards. Oh, and our templates. So I say we developed these for the Board of Soil Water Resources. Well, half of them that are on there were developed by us and half weren't. But these are really, really cool because it's a continuum of blooms from May all the way into October. And so we want to have a minimum of at least three blooming plants in those seasonalities so that there's constant resources for pollinators. Someone mentioned boulevards. They want to do a boulevard. We have great boulevard templates in our website. This is a rain garden I designed at Riverside Plaza, and it's got stepping stones going through the middle of it. Kids love to follow paths, and then they're less likely to trample the plants. So that's kind of a nice thing. Right. I think I'm running out of time, guys. I could just keep on going. Pocket plantings. This is, again, you guys saw this going around this design. Wonderful resources. There's more resources out there now than ever before. No excuses, you guys. No excuses other than our energy levels, which we're running out of right now. There's the boulevard planting template. And that middle photo is what one of our templates would look like. Wasn't that beautiful? Purple prairie clover. Wow. That's a great plant. Okay. I think I'm gonna stop.
You have to draw the names for the.
Oh, I gotta do, we do community planting events. This is at a park, tot lot. Oh my God, it's so adorable watching the kids and
Yeah.
helping them and teaching them. And you got some experience with that. Yeah, it is
I
great.
usually hire someone.
But it's great because once you teach one, then they can teach their friends,
I did have
ideally.
an elementary student the other day tell me about the native plant growing that they did at school years ago.
Yeah.
So that was cool, but
Okay.
look,
I'm going to end with one last template that we have. Containers. A lot of people might not have yards, and we have great templates for container gardens. Okay. Are we ready? Drum roll. What are we winning here? Nature's Best Hope by Douglas Ptolemy. As you guys know, Douglas's work, fantastic work. Karen Ekman. Karen, do you have this book in your library?
I have this other one,
But not this one. Fantastic. And the shirt, I almost put my name down on this one, but it's too small for me. Joe Crow. All right, Joe. So you guys, I think, leave the leaves in the fall.